Hi, I'm Commissioner Nancy Jester, and welcome to Nancy Jester Reports. Yesterday, on Tuesday, February 6th, we had your Board of Commissioners meeting and also some important committee meetings. So I want to go over with you what we talked about in those meetings. It's an important time of the year, February's budget season, so we did receive a report from the CEO on the budget, his budget presentation. I will highlight a couple of things. There are some things that are fine about the budget overall. I don't support it as is. One of the main reasons is that on most cities, except Tucker and Stonecrest, because they pay all the millage for the county, they pay each of the 7 rates we have. But the other cities, every city has a tax increase. Every city has a millage rate increase. And of course, you know, we just passed the additional 1 cent sales tax. The voters passed that, so now your sales tax is going up 1%, and if you live in any of the cities except Stonecrest and Tucker, your millage rate went up as well. And of course, District 1, my district is heavily municipalized. I only have a very small portion that isn't within a city, so almost everyone in District 1 will see an actual millage rate increase, and so I'm very disappointed in that. For instance, Dunwoody is going from 13.307 to 14.122. Brookhaven's going the same change. Then you've got Chamblee going from 13.013 to 13.734. And we'll make this available on the website so you can see the chart. But the chief driver in that is the general fund. The general fund is going up. The reason the unincorporated millage rate is staying the same at 20.81 is because although the general fund rate is going up, it's being offset if you live in unincorporated by a declination in police and fire, mainly police driving that unincorporated aggregated rate staying the same. I think that's not a good idea, and that will lead into my next topic about police, the police fund and police resource levels and staffing levels. So we did get that. We also got a presentation from the our financial advisor. Here, put it here somewhere. Here it is. PFM did this presentation, and one of the takeaways is that the police fund, the declination in the millage rate isn't sustainable if we are at what I'll call full employment for the police fund. So we're 155 staff members short there, and of course there's normal attrition. Maybe between 50 and 100 folks leave the police department every year, and so you have that attrition. Plus we have 155 unfilled policing positions. So if we are going to make great strides in recruiting and maintaining, keeping our talent, then the millage rate we're setting right now won't be sufficient to pay for that particular outcome. I also think that if you're having trouble recruiting, markets clear, markets equilibrate. They equilibrate on price or the wage of labor, and so I think that our what we're paying our police officers needs to be looked at very strategically here, whether it's the benefits or it's comp and benefits together. If we're not getting the police officers and staffing levels we want, we need to look at that marketplace and significantly adjust our compensation package so that we can recruit for that. So that is a very big issue for me. Those were the main things that we did, that we talked about. We met as a committee of the whole, so we just receive information and go over our agenda that we'll vote on next week. And we talk about a lot of the individual items in committee. So we did have robust committee meetings yesterday. We had our finance committee meeting, also went over the budget again, talked in more detail with our financial advisor about the staffing and what that might look like with the police millage. Talked about a capital improvements program and pulling that out of the budget and doing that separate now that we have SPLOST, so that we can really integrate that with our Citizens Oversight Committee and reporting on that separately to you, the voters, because you've approved that 1 cent sales tax for special purposes, for roads, fixing roads, and also some of our infrastructure needs with police and fire. So that was a big issue in our finance committee meeting. We also did talk about having going in jointly with the DeKalb Municipal Association, which represents most, if not all, of the cities in DeKalb, and looking at the effects of municipalization and annexation, not so much whether it's good or bad, but how could it best be done? What's the most efficient way to do these things? If we see annexations, which we've seen and we're likely to see more in the future, how do we do that in an efficient way so that everyone can have, all citizens can get adequate service delivery? So that's something that we talked about, and we're going to move that to the full board. Probably we'll vote on that next week, and we're looking at the Carl Vinson Institute to do something with us on that. So also in the FAB committee, we had a couple of presentations from a couple of departments, what we call constitutional departments. Those are departments that are led by other elected officials outside of the Board of Commissioners. Although we're responsible for the budgeting and approve their budget, they essentially are independent constitutional actors because they are elected in their own right. So we did talk about the juvenile court, and one of the we talked about their need for more judges to handle the case volume they have, and they have a significant case volume, and I think I'm sympathetic to the load that they have, because in fact we learned that they have more children in foster care in DeKalb than in any of the other metro counties right around us. We have 910 children in foster care compared to Fulton has 748, Cobb 494, and Clayton 265. And part of the reason that we have so many not in a permanent status but in this foster system is because of the caseload. They simply can't get through the volume of cases to get children into a permanent situation and out of the foster care system. That's one of the things that's creating that high number in DeKalb County. So the Judge Haynes came and talked to us about the need for perhaps another judge and a law clerk or two. So we'll be dealing with that, and I'm sympathetic to that issue. We had the tax commissioner come by and give a presentation and talk about his budget a little bit. The takeaway I'll tell you is the digest value I thought was interesting to look at. So the digest value that they last certified was $28,288,000,000 and change. So I'd like to thank both those departments for coming by and talking to us about their budgeting needs during the season. We also met in PWI today, that's the Public Works Committee, and we discussed, we had several change orders and various procurement issues, renewals, and so on. Two important topics I want to draw to your attention. You know, we continue to have sanitary sewer overflows or sewage spills, essentially. Even in dry weather, I'm getting concerned at how many we've had at the actual Snapfinger wastewater treatment plant. In dry and some wet weather, we have enough capacity there. It's not like we're under capacity there, but we've had some spills from within that treatment plant, and I think that's just an unforced error. I don't understand why that has happened. So I'm concerned about that, and I expressed that in that meeting. We also talked about one of the big problems in the sewer system that we're trying to craft an ordinance about, which is what we call fog or grease, fats, oils, grease. So I think we're going to change the name in our public education from fog, because that tends to confuse people, to grease. So, but particular types of development cause more issues with this than others. Multifamily, food service, those types of places can cause this. Long ago, many years ago, the food service industry, restaurants and so on, were forced to put in technologies that mitigated their contribution into a sewer system of fats and oils and greases, and that's worked tremendously well, and that's pretty much universally done throughout the nation. So we're talking about an ordinance that would look at multifamily and maybe even other residential type units to mitigate any of their contribution into the sewer system of these things that clog it and cost us all over time. So we talked about a tiered enforcement system, an education and tiered system, where you go from you having to clean, if we determined that the sewage overflow was from your particular development project, you'd have to clean it, and then you might have fines and another tier, and so on. And then we talked about whether the ordinance should also include, at the front end on new building, having to construct 2 sewer lines, one for kitchens and one for bathrooms, and putting in those grease interceptors, so treating it much more like a food service type development. But we didn't make any decisions 100% there. I think everybody definitely sees the tier system as helpful for existing, but there's some controversy about whether to, with new development, put in that requirement to have 2 sewer lines. We've asked for costs to look at what is that cost for a new development, because there's some differential from what the engineers of the county thought and maybe what developers are saying. So we're going to get that data together to look at it, because the engineers, and I think I understand their position rightly so, would like to prevent this from ever happening to begin with. So if you can prevent it on the front side of development, that helps tremendously. So we'll see where we go with this. I feel strongly that we'll probably pass a tier system, at least to start with, and maybe we'll add some development components later. So that's what we talked about at PWI today. So we'll pass the budget before the end of February. If you've got any questions or thoughts, please let my office know. And again, we'll let you know when the hearings are going to be held. So if you want to come down and speak before the commission about the 2008 fiscal year 2018 budget, you can. So stay tuned and join us again next week for another Nancy Jester Reports.